Welcome back to another edition of the Course Creation Incubator Podcast. I'm your host, Gina Nativia, here to help you cut through the fluff and the noise and get right to the heart of building out your course in a way that folks will be lining up to buy it. Because I've been talking to many of you lately, and you are in the midst of building your course, and I hear a lot of you are going for it. And I love it, and I love that you're taking action, and I want you to build your course in a way that means sales at the end of it. That means cash flow. And that's a lot of what we talk about in this podcast. And one of the things that I'm seeing and hearing is that some of you are going live with your courses, which I absolutely love. I talk through the benefits of going live, including trying your hand at a topic, validating your price point, and different reasons like that. I'll also link to the podcast I just did about how to create your first workshop. Now, if you're listening to me right now, if you've listened to those episodes, maybe you've gone live with your first workshop or a course, some of you are saying, I'm getting tired of going live, Gina. What's next? Well, next is building a self-paced course that your students can take ongoing, that doesn't make you have to show up week to week or day to day sharing that course live. And it's important when you get to that stage to transition to that static course. This actually happened with my 6-week accelerator. I taught my 6-week accelerator live for years and years. And I love teaching it live. I love interacting with students, seeing their responses and their expressions, hearing the different questions that they came up with each and every time. And then I realized I could only do it once a year because of the big commitment it took. And I thought, I'm not getting to all the course creators that I want to reach. I'm only offering it once a year live. I need to record this in a thoughtful way and put it out as a great self-paced course, which is exactly what I did, which is what the 6-week accelerator is now. And by the way, I've had students going through it and loving it, which I'm so thrilled by because let's be honest, there's always that fear that when you put it into a self-paced container, it's not going to be as good. It's not going to be as good as me teaching it live. I'm not going to be able to make it come alive, but I'm getting the feedback that it's just as good, if not better, than the live version. When you sign up for the 6-week accelerator right now, you get a one-on-one call with me and we talk through what's the course that you're creating, what's the promise, what's the offer, what are the different details of your package, the price point, the bonuses, how do you plan to sell it? I love doing these coaching calls as part of the 6-week accelerator because it helps me set the stage for your success. Now, that's part of me being a boutique course creation coach and digital strategist because I want to have that intimate experience with you. Now, there's nothing better, in my opinion, than the 6-week accelerator help you build and market your course. If you're in the midst of building your course right now and you've already got your outline and maybe you're starting your scripts, the 6-week accelerator will help you promote your course and figure out how to sell it. The first, the second, the third time. I'll link to the 6-week accelerator in the show notes because it's a great program. It's a holistic approach to course creation. So check that out if you're interested in starting from scratch or you're in the midst of creating your course. So let's dive into the 5 secrets of going live to self-paced like I did with the 6-week accelerator. If questions pop up for you, hit me up on Instagram. I love getting the DMs and the questions. It's really simple for me to just leave you an audio, get you unstuck. And make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and leave me a review. I would love it. And let me know when you leave me a review. All right, secret number 1 is to plan ahead in terms of your teaching chunks. Now, I talk about this in that workshop episode in terms of how I want you to break down your content into chunks that you want to teach. This is important, especially when you're planning on going evergreen or self-paced because you want those tighter lessons. What tends to happen when we record for live is, say I do a 1-hour or a 90-minute workshop, I don't want you guys to just throw up a 90-minute video as your course. As a general rule, you might have reasons for doing that if you have a mastermind or a high-end group coaching program. But if you have a low or medium price course, I want you to break it up. Here's another reason why this is so important. In a live course, your students are engaged in a community and are cheering each other on to keep moving forward. When it's self-paced, your students need to be able to work through the material on their own. Breaking it down makes it easier for them to do one piece at a time, feel like they're making progress, and keep moving forward. And that means planning ahead in terms of your content. Now, if you've done your course before, say you've gone live and you've got an outline, you say, okay, I've got an hour of content based on this. Look at your original outline and break it up into what you think will be 10-minute pieces. So you got an introduction, a couple of stories, that's 10 minutes. Then you've got an exercise. Okay, that's going to take another 5 minutes, etc. So think thoughtfully. Go back to that outline that you originally used and break it up. And same with your slides. If you had slides as part of your original workshop or your live course, and that's how you're going to be teaching again inside of your course, by the way, just because you taught live with slides doesn't mean you have to do that inside of your self-paced course. You can mix it up. You could do more direct to camera because you're not going to be live, and then you can do some of that slides with audio presentation or a slides with a direct to camera or you in the corner. So you want to look at those slides and how you want to break them up, just like you did with your outline. Okay, I know there's a space here because this is going to be a new video when it goes into my self-paced course. That's a huge step that will save you a ton of time. Knowing how you plan to break up your content when it goes into self-paced mode is so much of the battle when you go from live to evergreen. So that's secret number 1. Plan ahead in terms of your chunks and your assets, like your slides. You could look at your homework as well, too. If like you need to break up your PDFs in a different way, do it. Okay, secret number 2 is think about your welcome and the overall student orientation, because when you go live, there's a lot you can get away with. Trust me, I've gotten away with it in terms of welcoming folks to your group. Because you typically have a community, like I mentioned, in conjunction with the live program. And sometimes you don't really have to think through how you want to welcome them. You have your overall welcome, but there's a lot of forgiveness that can happen because you just go into the group and say, oh, by the way, there's this. Or I forgot to mention about blank. And then questions come up and you can answer it in the moment. That's the beauty of going live and having that community. But with going self-paced, you want to anticipate those questions. What's going to come up? And by the way, you should know what's going to come up because you've been doing it live. So for example, when I taught my 6-week Accelerator live, I didn't bring up software in the very beginning because it's just not appropriate yet. I thought, well, I don't need to teach this yet, but a lot of questions came up and you guys know it too, right? You guys have a lot of questions about what software is good, what should I be using, what do I recommend? And they came up so early, I thought, okay, in the self-paced version, I've got to address this early and often. So when you enroll in the 6-week Accelerator, you're going to see in the FAQs, we address software right away. They say you don't need to buy it until about week 3, and then we're going to talk more about it in week 4, but just hang on. But there's also resources in there, different software you can buy, different equipment and things like that. Stuff that I recommend because I use it or because my students use it. So now I know to bring that up as part of the welcome experience. So think through, what are those big objections or questions that are going to come up early that you can address as part of your self-paced welcome process? Or are there fears that are going to come up very early that you need to address? And I think the welcome is a great time to do that, to address those fears. I know this is going to bubble to the surface and that's okay, ... The welcome is a wonderful place to do that. I want you to think through and make sure your students have a seamless experience. Even though you're not with them, how can you walk with them through your course with ease when they're taking your course? How do you make sure that they get off to a solid start? You want your students to hit the ground running when it comes to your course, and the welcome can make all the difference in that. Think through the fears, the challenges, the objections. The third secret from going from live to self-paced is thinking through the Q&A. Now, you're going live one last time so you can hopefully, ideally, record evergreen content at the same time that you're delivering for your live students. So you want to make sure you save the Q&A until the end so it's easier to repurpose content for evergreen. Now, I'm a huge proponent of Q&As, especially when you're teaching live. You can learn so much about your students from the questions they ask. They can really help you fill in the holes of what you're teaching. So when you're teaching live to go to self-paced, leave the Q&As for the end. Hold the questions to after you start teaching, because we've all watched those live programs and those replays where students interject all the time. Sometimes it's helpful. Oh, yes, I had that question. That's so great that she asked that. But sometimes it can be kind of jarring, especially if students have off-topic questions. Like I'm teaching about outlines and they've got a question about affiliates. So if they have a question about that, that can kind of disrupt your learning experience. And we don't want that. We want to avoid that as much as possible. So you're going to leave the Q&As for the end, or you may or may not keep them in your course. This is where you need to make a judgment call. Did that Q&A really add something to my program? Did it fill the holes of what I'm teaching? Did it make a weakness a strength? These are the kind of questions I want you to think about when it comes to Q&As. The fourth secret for when you're going live is to be careful with your references, because you want to make them as evergreen as possible. In other words, events or trends or things that have happened, as much as possible, keep it timeless as much as you can. I was filming Ultimate Edge with Tony Robbins, and this was way back in 2007. And Tony was asking us in the studio who was a sports champion who's at the top of their field that he could mention as part of Ultimate Edge. And me, being the greatest Roger Federer fangirl ever, I said Roger. And for those of you not into tennis, Fed is the GOAT on grass, arguably the GOAT overall. Nadal and Joker fans, please do not write into this podcast. So then Tony stops and he says, is Roger Federer still at the top? And I said, absolutely. He's in his prime. He's going to be at the top forever and ever. Now, was he at the top forever and ever? If you know tennis, you know Fed just retired. He wasn't at the top forever, but he was at the top for a long, long time. He was dominant. So I felt confident in sharing that with Tony. Like I could see the future. But I also wonder, did they ever update that? They must have updated Ultimate Edge. If you guys know, will you let me know? Because I'd love to know if they went back and updated some of those outdated Ultimate Edge references. So when I think about that as an example, I think, okay, got to try to keep my references and my examples as timeless as possible. So if I'm going to share examples of websites or courses, for example, I try to do ones that I think are going to be relevant years from now. Because when you get really outdated references, again, it takes the students out of the flow. It disrupts the learning. They feel like, they recorded this years ago and maybe didn't take the time or the effort to re-record it or update it. So as much as possible, keep it timeless. Then the fifth and final secret to going from live to self-paced is to keep it going. Keep adding to your course and program. Because the great thing about self-paced versus live is live's in the moment. You taught over 8 or 6 weeks and then you're done. And then more than likely, you don't go back. You don't get to add. Those students went through the program live and don't necessarily go back into the program. But when you have a self-paced program, depending on how you're offering it and for how long, you have the opportunity to add exercises that maybe you didn't do live or different resources. So keep adding to your library or to your bonuses. Students love it when you continue to add value and stack what they've already received from you. So don't underestimate those resources. All right, hopefully these 5 secrets encouraged you to perhaps go from live to self-paced. By the way, you don't have to completely take a leap and just go self-paced. You can still have a live component. You can offer bonuses in terms of group calls or live calls. You can do a hybrid. You can transition slowly but surely. Make sure you're subscribed. Check out the 6-week Accelerator so you and I can work together. I can coach you through getting your course done in the greatest way to sell it. Now, next week, I have a special guest, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss one episode. He's a breath of fresh air, and he's going to teach us about authentic selling. And he's going to give us little scripts and tidbits about what to say and how to approach selling in a different kind of way. I think you're going to love it. Until then, go create, be you, and be brilliant, and get it done.